Right.
So they kind of use that parallel in these 2 episodes
Right.
to kind of show his hesitance, but also his, I don't know, the willingness to maybe give it a try, you know?
Right.
Because he knew he had to give it a try in the Ava. So because whenever he takes that first step into Misato's apartment, which is him, she's like, welcome home.
Right.
You know, because it's his home.
Right.
You need to take that first step. You just need to do it. So he takes that first step, then he takes the second one, he's home. You know, so he actually makes it through, you know, and that's whenever they allude to her more of a bachelorette lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
Full of trash,
It's
booze
just,
bottles.
Yeah.
He
It
opens
looked like me when I had roommates when I was like
yeah,
19.
It was food everywhere. Her boxes aren't unpacked. Nothing's ready to
I don't
go.
think my place was that bad.
No, you didn't have old Fortran in there. You didn't have bottles of Yebisu. Hopefully I say that right. Which all that stuff is real. They took the beer from something real.
Right.
And I know all the old bottles, the extra stuff was real too. They grounded a lot of that stuff in really cool reality. That's whenever he opens the freezer and he sees, you know, ice. He opens the other freezer, snacks, and he opens one and it's like beer. And the fucking thing is full of beer.
Full of beer.
Like, and they look like
that
big
girl
beers.
likes some beer.
They look like Foster's cans.
Yeah.
They look massive, right? So you're like, damn, that's a lot of beer.
Japanese for beer.
Right. And that's when she's getting dressed in the other room and she says something like, you know, don't wake the sleeping one. You know, he's like, what? Oh, don't worry.
Don't open that.
Yeah, just don't.
We don't want to wake the sleeping.
So they don't really necessarily kind of get into that until here, in a second. But that's whenever she cooks all the food. She's like, all right, let's get ready to go. And she's chugging a beer. And she's like, yeah, it's like it's a party.
It is.
For her. She loves it.
Well, I don't think she has a lot of
no
outside interaction.
No, you know that she's friends with the doctor, but she's not. She doesn't have any other friends, and there's not a lot of people around. So, in what she does, she's probably on call all the time too, just like everybody else. They're always working, you know,
right?
Which is kind of crazy.
I mean, if you're leading the tactical unit, whatever,
yeah, you got to be ready to go. And she lets off steam like a motherfucker too,
like a badass.
Yeah, like
quick.
she's strips down and she gets in her favorite beach clothes, and then she's ready to go. And she's like, oh, well, I know it's on microwave, but it's still pretty good. And he's like, I guess, you know, like a little dick again, you know. He's like, whatever. And she's like, what? And then that's when she reaches...
She freaks out
She kind of freaks out on him. And it's just like she's fucking with his head. And then, of course, she's bent over the table. So
that's, that was art direction was a little strange. Like the direction of the show was a little strange for me because at first, like they're like gratuitously like her breasts are right there, and I'm like, okay, well, Shinji's 14, 12, however old Shinji is.
Yeah.
17, I don't know.
No, 13.
Yeah, but boobs. Okay, I get it. You know, but then they pan that camera right around, like here's her ass while she's bending over, and I'm like. That wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
I feel a little dirty now.
Yeah, and he's just, you know, he's a little kid going through puberty. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's on his mind, right?
Right. But I mean, like, he can't pan the camera around. I don't really think that's a power that Shinji has.
Yeah, no. But you're seeing that angle too from his view, you know, kind of
right.
under the table, and she's kind of like asserting some sort of I don't know, friendly dominance almost, because she kind of laughs it off a little bit.
Right, of course.
That's when she talks about taking a bath. She's like, go in. It's taking a bath is like the washing machine of life.
Yeah.
You know, which...
It's a great line.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a bath, if you got a big enough tub, it's kind of nice. If you're in one of the hotel tubs, it's nothing, you know. It's kind of weird. And then that's what, like... He opens the door. He's looking up. He sees all of her bras hanging. Of course, the house is just...
Well, it's a functional... person who probably works 80 hours a week, you know,
or more,
and it lives by herself for the most part, other than her roommate, which we get to meet shortly.
Yeah, and that's when he opens the door and it's Pin, which Pin is he's a warm water penguin. He basically
Hot Springs pink.
Yeah, he basically lives in the freezer that she keeps there. So
the one that she said not to open.
She must have, from what I read too, she took him from her previous job. Which they don't really talk too much about it.
Okay.
So there's no there's no real penguin like him. So he's a genetically modified kind of a penguin with retractable claws because he opens his deal. Penguin's so indifferent,
Right.
And I think in a lot of like the comics,
it's kind of judgy looking.
Yeah, I know. He's like very judgmental. He's like, huh.
Right.
And he kind of walks over, he extends his claw and gets into the deal. It's like he just took a bath and he's going to go into the freezer and rack out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he is the comic relief at this point, because he really doesn't do anything funny, but he's just a funny little character, know? It's pretty cool. And that's whenever he
that awesome scene of him coming out of the bathroom freaking out.
He comes out of the bathroom freaking out.
He's naked.
And she picks up the beer. And then it's because it's hiding his junk. She picks up the beer, and it's a little bitty deal of toothpicks.
It's hiding his junk.
Yeah, and then she's like, "You want to put that thing up?" And he's like, oh, and he freaks out because, of course, because he's like, and that's one of those anime moments,
for sure. The over the top.
Yeah, and then again, the theme of the show is unfamiliar ceilings because he's basically in the bath, he's looking up, and it's something different to him. So he's always. And that's a theme with him, it's just seeing that unfamiliar spot, and he's trying to get used to everything, and he's growing in a different, he's puberty, and there's all this other stuff that's going on in his life with his dad and everything,
Yeah, regardless of puberty, what's going on with his family, I don't care if that's what's normal for them. That's a little crazy.
It's not normal.
It's not normal for everybody.
That's whenever we kind of get to see Sele for the first time. Now, Sele is they're the organization that maintains the global power cabal, and it's a secret backer of Gehern. Gehern basically was Nerve before.
Okay.
So they were basically in charge of getting Tokyo 3 ready. Okay. So they know they've been preparing for this for a long time.
They kind of seem like they're in charge of everything.
Kind of, yeah. So they kind of allude to, this human instrumentality project, which of course we'll kind of get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I assume they're going to bring more of that forward, like like from the story. I gathered that.
And I like the way that they have them kind of remoting in almost. Right. So they're kind of backed by these images, almost like what you see nowadays in a lot of movies like Avengers Endgame, things like that. People are remoted in. They're all part of this big giant board, and these people must be from other countries is what they're kind of alluding to, different branches of Sele or Nerve or anything like that. So they're all kind of in there talking about that, kind of saying how the budget's gone out of control and you're using this as a toy. You've given this toy to for your kid, and they're like, you've gone over the budget. And then the main guy at the very end is like, your budget will be considered.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like we'll talk about this.
Right.
And that's when they kind of still allude to, hey, we're still banking on you for this main thing. You're in charge of the human instrumentality project, which again, that's one of those things we'll get into a little bit later. And that's just kind of the beginnings of what you see is this power organization behind everything. Right. It's kind of pulling the strings, but it also alludes to Gendo basically knowing what he's doing, and he's doing something a little bit different too in the background.
Right.
Like he's got his own agenda to the whole thing.
Gendo seems like he always has his own agenda from these two episodes.
Oh yeah.
He's very calculating.
He's the main guy that is basically he kind of knows what he wants to happen with all of this. You could tell he's completely cocksure, 100%. Like he knows this is what. That's again, when we go back to that part, and I know we probably skipped over it, where we see another Evangelion in a room.
Yeah.
That looks like it was punching through the wall. It's got in the entry plug, which is behind the neck, it's got a cross in it, so it's like a terminator for the entry plug. So it's just not allowing it to get hooked up again and won't do anything again, right? So it's kind of sitting there. The control room's wrecked, and then it's Gendo Akari, and they're kind of talking a little bit about Rei, which I haven't really talked too much about Rei in this episode, but we know that she was in the last one. She showed up a couple of times.
Right.
So that Unit Zero and Sky, I like how in most of those shots of the Avas, they show like the caution spots to where it's like people getting up to like watch out for this area.
Right.
You could tell there's a big organization going around just making sure that this stuff is kind of set in place. And it's like, watch out for this. We're gonna work on this part of it, and then they kind of get back to the first interaction with Shinji, because Shinji's laying on his bed, right? He's listening to his SDAT tape,
Yes.
And then that's when he starts remembering what's happening at that time, or at least you think he's remembering it, So that's whenever he takes that step and he falls down, and then the angel,
inside the Ava.
Yeah. So he's back there, and you kind of see what happens. So whenever they show him initially taking on the angel's kicking the shit out of him.
Absolutely.
And
but in fairness to Shinji, he'd been there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, here, do this.
Yeah, like do this, and he can barely walk, but yet he stands up.
Right.
He's going after this dude. He's doing whatever he can. And that's when the angel grabs his arm and breaks it, and they're like, "Relax. It only feels like it's getting hurt." So you're learning a little bit more about the entry plug that he's in.
Right.
You kind of get to see more of that, which I think is a fascinating idea. Again, it's you feel and you breathe this LCL fluid. You're kind of just in this deal, moving it like you would normally move. You think about what you want to do and you do it. Right. It's got basic rudimentary controls, like a couple of arm controls, it looks like, but nothing really too crazy because he's all neural linked into the whole thing.
Right.
And that's when that angel just royally kicks the crap out of him, breaks his arm. Shinji's freaking out, and then that's when the angel grabs his head and puts it's got that rail that's just slamming into his head back and forth, boom, boom, boom. And they show, the control room where they're basically saying, hey, structural damage, it's about to give way. And then it just shoots through it, and it shoots the Ava all the way back as far as it'll go. And that blood just like pours out of that angel, Mm-hmm. So it's like the angel's dead. So they try basically to get Shinji out, but they can't do it because nothing's responding.
Right.
That's when that angel goes berserk, is what they call him. So the angel
didn't seem to go berserk.
Not necessarily, but he's basically, I guess berserker mode would be like no control from the actual operator.
From the control.
Yeah. There's nothing they can do. All links are severed from the neuro link that they got. And if you look at that in the background, it has all of the different areas of the brain that are connected, and they're showing kind of all of that just fail at the same time. And then that's when the eyeball lights up, and then that's when that angel just goes nuts. Or not the angel, but the Ava goes nuts. And they're basically, they see it. It's still plugged in, so it's still got power. Right. Because all of the angels or the Avas are basically tethered to everything.
Yeah, like an umbilical cord.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because the amount of power it takes to run those things, they have to be hooked up constantly to be able to run it, or they got like 5 minutes of time if it ever severs. Yeah. So that's when that Ava goes nuts and starts kicking the shit out of that angel. That angel can't adapt fast enough, I mean, it's just like, wait a minute, it starts to freak out, and he basically kicks the crap out of that thing.
Well, he puts up that T field, right?
The AT field, yeah.
T field, yeah. And like they're like, oh.
Well, they talk about the absolute terror field, right?
Yeah.
They say that the Ava is basically creating its own AT field, and it's fighting off. And they're like, no, it's degrading the angel's AT field, because when the angel has that AT field up, it's supposed to be impenetrable.
Right.
So again, that's something that develops along the way too.
So this is obviously something they've never seen before.
Yeah, but they know about it. They know that AT field is there, and it's
no, I mean as far as somebody breaching.
Yes, going through it. Yeah, they didn't even think that was possible, but it degrades that field enough to where he basically reaches his hand into it and breaks it. Right. That's when he grabs the angel's arms and twists them and breaks them. And at the same time, they show his arm, the one that was broken, and it just heals itself, which is pretty crazy too. The whole thing just like, as soon as he forms his own AT field, it kind of makes everything perfect,
Right.
And he's and the angel's back, or the Ava's back. I'm gonna fucking slap myself after this one because I keep referring to it like that. And then I mean, he goes nuts on that thing, goes ham on it, completely just rips that thing apart. Got the angel down on the ground, starts going after that centerpiece in the angel's body,
right?
Which is it's basically its S2 engine, so it's what technically is running the angel almost, right?
Okay.
So it's an organic kind of an engine. And he rips off those spiny little things that are in front of it and starts just beating it with it. And that's when the angel freaks out and is like, wait